Joe Reis and Matt Housley are known for many things in our industry. Most of us know them very well, but they're not known for one thing, which is holding back. They are on top when it comes to roasting hype and even roasting vendors who hype. So that's I'm so glad to have them. They are the authors of, I have my copy here,
Ooh.
Fundamentals of Data Engineering by O'Reilly. And they're the ones people I look up to when I have questions because the world of data and AI can feel both exhilarating and overwhelming at exactly the same moment. So to cut through the noise, welcome Joe and Matt to this podcast. So glad we've done it. We've done an episode together a couple of years ago, and now it's so great to have you back.
Thanks for having us back.
Yeah, thank you. This is a lot of fun.
Thank you. We were hoping to get another character, if I may, in our podcast, and that's Tony Bear. But Tony obviously had better things to do with his time, so we'd miss him this time. So,
Yeah, he chose wisely. He's a smart guy. So
all right.
Yeah,
So,
we'll
so
yeah,
let's
we'll
get
get on
started.
together sometime. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So Matt, you and Tony are doing quite a. You both have your series together. So, uh, yeah. So,
Yeah, I'm excited about that, and thank you for coming on. Sorry the episode didn't come out this week, but it should come out next week. But yeah, it's really great to bring Tony's perspective in addition to mine because there's a lot of stuff from the analytics side that you
mhm.
guys do that I just don't know that well. So
No worries. We are all constantly learning. So
are you
Matt,
becoming like you be like Tony's apprentice now there, Matt? Like you
perhaps,
okay.
or maybe we're each other's apprentice. It's just a mutual
That's
learning
fine.
experience. Yeah.
so Matt, what's keeping you busy? I know you both had ternary data in Salt Lake
Yes.
City for a long time, and now I see you all over the place. So Matt, let's start with you. What's keeping you busy these days?
Yeah, so that's kind of my main project right now, and then some other consulting work and
I
things.
see.
But really excited about ramping up that one and getting
Mhm.
back to some writing. Got some things that should come out soon in that regard. So yeah.
Amazing. Joe, what about you?
Um, Started a new media company, and so I've just been focused on that. Writing a book. Obviously, this book
Hmm.
is over a year late. But I get to set the rules, so whatever. But apart from that, I got a few other books in the wings right now from other authors. Working on a new course right now. Uh, Lots of YouTube content gonna be coming out. So yeah, just been busy, and obviously, on the conference circuit as well. So do that and
Yeah.
speak. You know how it is.
I
So,
saw you at Google Cloud Next, and I
yep,
know you were running some events there. I stopped by one
yep.
of your
It's great. Thanks for stopping
evening
by.
events. That was so much fun.
Yeah.
And there is always so much to talk about. In fact, figuring out what to talk about was a challenge when I started thinking about this. So let's start with the hottest topics, which is AI agents. So it's not even just Gen AI, and we'll talk a lot about AI, but I'm just curious. In your mind, uh, have you seen AI agents in use and how are they being adopted? Or what are your thoughts?
I mean, you mentioned Google Cloud Next, right? And it was interesting. So I actually did I did a very formal study. I walked through the conference hall, the expo hall,
Hmm.
and actually had a stopwatch. And I was just timing the intervals between when I would hear agent
Wow.
for
Oh
somebody
my
say agent.
God.
Yeah, it was funny. It's not joking. It's not a very formal study, but it was telling. I think it was every like 5, 10 seconds.
I
You
see.
couldn't escape the word agent, and so I thought that was interesting. What am I seeing in the real world? I'm seeing it reminds me a lot of actually what happened with ChatGPT maybe early 2023,
Hmm.
sort of through mid 2023, which is you saw like a everyone was suddenly interested in doing some sort of a chatbot LLM.
Yeah.
That feels like the same amount of exuberance, but the delivery right now, I haven't really seen anybody doing it yet. But
Hmm.
I think the thing that's holding it back, at least from my observation, is really the enterprise controls. And so, hopefully, like agent to agent, which Google announces, hopefully a step forward where there's just kind of enterprise grade, um, you know, permissioning and security and governance with these agents. I don't know, Matt, what are you seeing out there?
So I'll channel Dickens a bit and say it's the best of times and worst of times for AI with agents. So what's the positive? I mean, I think this really is promising technology. I think we've seen some amazing things from it. On the other hand, you see numbers floated on how much it costs to run these queries. And in some cases, they're saying to solve a complex math problem that maybe is already solved, actually, like not something brand new, is going to cost
Mhm.
$30,000 with agents. To
That's
me,
about the
they're
price of a grad student.
right, but I haven't seen that these can really do truly original work. Right, there's a lot of hype about they can do PhD level research, but there's so much BS coming out of the leaders of these AI companies that I
Well,
don't
I get
trust
the
that
sense
at
though, right?
all.
Like it feels like this is like the industry needs another thing to put its hat on right now.
That's right. Yeah.
Right, you know what I mean? So if
Yeah.
it's agents now, it's going to be clusters of agents and
Right.
communities of agents is some of the stuff I'm seeing. So
Yeah.
it is bananas for sure. But the
It's
cost of this stuff,
crazy.
you're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
I mean, I could just hire Matt Housley in grad school to do a lot of this work, probably for
Yeah,
twenty-four
I mean,
thousand
it's
dollars
it'd be way
actually.
cheaper than agents, right? And that's the
Yeah,
problem. Like, it's gotten so excessive. I think where the promise is, the reality is companies have been doing agent-like stuff without calling it agents for
Correct.
years, and
Yep.
the ones that were saying about it were not using one tool to do it because LLMs are just so expensive. They were using small language models. Losovin Bashishta, I think it was last week, had an article about this. How like really to make agents work, we need to start looking at small language models. They were combining that with more traditional, just logical code solutions. And I think that's where we're headed in the long term. I think we have to
Yeah.
have some rationalization because otherwise, like amazingly, the AI space is not getting cheaper and more efficient. It's just getting more and more expensive every year. And that can't go on forever, right? Like there has to be some rationalization. And that's not to say that technology is useless. It's to say that something is going to change soon, one way or another.
well, especially in
I
right now's economic environment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
was so amused to see this tweet last week from
Yeah,
Sam Altman. You know, when I use
yeah,
ChatGPT, I'm just so used to saying please and then I give a command.
yeah.
Just by using the words please and thank you, it's costing OpenAI millions of dollars a year.
Yeah. But let's contextualize that. So there's this article that I mentioned as we were kicking off on Ed
Hmm.
Citron's blog, and we can put it in the show notes or something. But the title is "OpenAI is a systemic risk to the tech industry," and he basically argues that OpenAI is on track to spend something like $40 billion in the next year or two. And that's why it's costing millions of dollars to say please and thank you, even though those words aren't that significant, because they're spending so much money
Hmm.
overall. And so just a small slice of that is millions and
Oh, I do
millions of
my part.
dollars.
I'm just overly nice to it. I just
Yeah, that's right. But that's just it. Like, it's not just please and thank you. It's like just any kind of stupid query we run.
Yeah.
If you look across everyone using the tools, is costing millions and millions of dollars and not
Yeah.
really
What do you
returning
think you're
I
gonna have
anything
I
like a
value.
Lehman Brothers moment in this industry?
That's what he argues.
I
We'll
see.
put the
Yeah,
post
I'll
in the
check this
show notes and
out.
people can
Yeah.
read it up on it and see if
So,
they
so
agree. But
talking about usage of AI,
yeah,
you both, I've heard you say, Joe, you love coding in Python, and you both, you do projects for your clients. How much of AI are you using for your coding these days? And are you doing vibe coding?
You know, I'm using AI a ton. I have a GitHub Copilot subscription. I use it a
Hmm.
lot. I wrote an article a couple weeks ago where I've been actually having a lot of fun just getting back into building things. It's been great and building things for myself and for my business and for
Hmm.
educational materials. Actually, it's funny. Ava Maya and I were just talking about we're going to do a project of making an iceberg extension for Microsoft Office or Microsoft Access.
okay.
No. Oh my
Because it's
That's
like
God.
so
I
amazing.
don't want to hear
stupid.
access again. Sorry. Let
Access
this
is
be
the new
Um,
DuckDB.
yeah, he's gonna kick us off the
triggering
show
me
now.
now.
I was gonna make yeah, we're also talking about making a DuckDB and Access extension too, just for the hell
Oh
of it.
my
But just like
God.
this is
Are
like
you
the most
going to do for
ridiculous stuff.
DBase 3 Plus?
What's that?
DBase 3 Plus? Are you going to do it for Fox Pro? I'm just
That might be
curious.
the next one. No, but I mean the whole thing is like
FileMaker,
it's just
FileMaker.
you have. I was talking with Patrick McFadden about this actually at Google Next. We were just chatting for a while about how AI is making coding just fun again. Like you can come up with
Yeah.
the most ridiculous stuff, and you could probably build it actually.
Oh, yeah.
So it helps you
Yeah.
definitely get through the hump because before what you have to go look at documentation, which you still should do, obviously, if you're going to be using stuff in
Mhm.
production, like please understand how the tools work. But it's a lot of fun. A good example of this is a few weeks ago, I was giving a workshop at Georgia Tech,
Hmm.
and a few days before my workshop, in my infinite wisdom, I was like, oh, let's just like completely blow up my old lab and just redo it. And because let's build a data warehouse. Let's put a large language model on top of it, and let's do text to SQL queries. That
Hmm.
sounds fun. I built that in like what, a day and a half.
So I have
That
a
was fun.
prediction. I think this is, and Matt, I want to get your view, but I just want to say this is where I think this world is going to go. Within an organization, you can bring up like Cursor, Replit, Windsurf, or any of these tools. And if you're, let's say, in marketing, and you have a very expensive SaaS product that is like full-fledged and all the bells and whistles, and you're paying through it, it's not integrated into your system. A marketeer can now go into one of these coding tools and say, build me an app just for my own use, my team's use. I don't need you to worry about the enterprise features because this is not being deployed outside. It's being like run on a local host. And but these are the features I need. And I think it can be a lot of fun. And frankly, it can disrupt the SaaS tools. It'll have only a fraction of the capability of a enterprise grade SaaS product, but it's all that company needs. And if it's a small company, it's highly customized to what they need. And so now a non-developer or marketeer certainly is building his or her own app. Do you see that happening?
I mean, I think we're kind of already seeing that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna talk about the positive here and the negative. So I think that part is very positive, right? The fact that people can get in who didn't have coding skills and can start writing code and building things. But we're also starting to see the consequences of that. And so one of the things we're seeing, open source maintainers talk about this a lot, that they get constantly bombarded with people asking questions about their frameworks. And
Hmm.
if you even take the time to look at their code, it's like, oh, the ChatGPT named the variable, had it capitalized over here and then lowercase over here, and so it doesn't work. You have people writing code. Vibe coding means that people can't debug even the most basic issues that a
Right.
kid, playing around with C on their local machine could debug. And so somehow we have to like combine the I can just build it myself with some basic skills of coding, or we're going to have real problems. The second thing I see is that in general, AI is great for things where you only need to be 90% right. And I would say for an internal SaaS app, that's probably true. Where you get into trouble is if that SaaS app starts to become really important to that company and there's an outage or a security breach down the road. I mean, you intend for it to be internal, low stakes, and then it turns into external, high stakes. And then someday, because the code is wrong, it blows up or gets hacked. And you saved, by not hiring a coder, you saved a few $100,000, and you end up costing the company $10 million with security breach or some other tech debt happening. And so that's my terror. We're kind of in an era of blind cost cutting right now, and at least so
Hmm.
far in the tech industry, it's not motivated by bad business performance externally. And that might change with the economy, but for now, it's just motivated by Wall Street, right? And I agree there was some bloat in the past, but now we're starting to overcut, and that unfortunately has coincided with this AI hype cycle, with this idea that I can just replace my very experienced, very competent coders with Copilot, and I'm worried that that's going to have consequences. You save 10 million here, and you lose 100 million down the road because of security breach or because of
Hmm.
a major outage
Yeah,
that
but you
lasts
made your
many,
quarter
many
look
days.
good.
Yeah, exactly, and it's dangerous, right? Like if this.
Yeah.
So I hope again that we can get some rationalization to your point, Joe. Like
Well,
so that yeah, go ahead.
this is a talk I've been working on, and this might actually be the next book I work on. But there's a few threads to this. I did a podcast in February about what I termed the Great Pacific Garbage Patch of AI slopware.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And what this means is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is a result, I would say, of manufacturing things for disposability,
Yeah.
plastics, et cetera, et cetera. Well, it doesn't go away; it just goes into the ocean, and that's a real shame. Or it goes into landfills. But I feel like we have this opportunity right now to use AI plus humans to make better software. But I've used tools, like Replit and so forth, and they're great. I think, but you got to know the context in which they should be used. I mean,
Yeah.
my wife gave me an app idea. I'm like, cool, let's try it out in Replit. Let's just build it,
Hmm.
right? She's always had this idea of a virtual closet where clothes can just be recommended to her, and so we built that.
Mhm.
It was okay, but I looked at the code and I was like, great. So this is something I inherited now. So if I'm a developer and say this app, you know. If it's used for personal use, great. But I still need to rationalize it. I still need to understand what happened under the hood. And now that and there's this old saying that nothing's ever a prototype. Eventually, everything becomes production software.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
this is sort of the danger is,
Yep.
you
The
just sort of flip the
design.
funnel where now you just were handed this thing kind of sight unseen, and you're like, okay, do I understand it? Whereas if you built software,
Right.
I've been a software engineer, data engineer, whatever, and when you build systems from the ground up, at least you sort of understand how it works at an atomic level. And the
Yeah.
thing is, every software has quirks, but these are quirks that
Yeah.
were feature requests at some point, were bug fixes, but they're there for a reason. And so if you invert this, it's just sort of like inheriting a manufactured home
Hmm.
in a lot of ways. And so that's how I kind of think of it. But Matt's absolutely right, where um, the quality is in craftsmanship is one of these things where I feel it's just something we got to pay attention to.
So, so with all this AI doing coding, AI generating content, I was horrified to read that by next year, 90% of content on the internet will be AI generated. And I think humans would be the collateral damage because their voices will be lost in this sea of AI generated content. So, in this scenario, where do you think the future tech jobs will be? Not like tomorrow, but maybe 5 years from now. What do you think people will be doing? I'm just curious if you've thought about that.
Think about it every day. What do you think,
Oh,
Matt?
So let's talk about let's poke at that 90% number for a minute. I mean, I would say that even before AI,
hmm,
probably more than 90% of the content on the web was slop. It wasn't necessarily generated by machines. Sometimes it was like simple, AI tools of some sort. There were pre-LLM Gen AI hype cycle. But a lot of it was just like poor quality writing that was outsourced to someone who didn't actually know the domain topic
hmm,
It's
and
content farms.
content farms. Exactly right.
content
And
farm.
so I think the 90% number is the wrong metric. It's like, okay, let's look at what
Hmm,
people actually consume. And I'm curious to see how that goes. I think it will be a real problem. I think we're going to see the same thing that we saw in like YouTube's race to a billion hours of content watched a year, which is in that case, it wasn't content. It was like a lot of really horrifying content, right? That helped them to get there. And I think we're going to have problems with AI churning out really low quality content that also has other consequences like lots of misinformation and
oh,
hate speech and a
yeah,
lot of other things. I think there will still be a huge place for high quality content. You kind of look at what happened to Hollywood in the past when TV came out and it became much cheaper to produce shows. There was
hmm,
this discussion of maybe Hollywood is going away because Hollywood, everything they do takes a huge team and it's very, very expensive. But it turned out that people still wanted that high quality content. They just didn't just want the throwaway, weekly sci-fi content that they would see on TV. They wanted something that had really high production values, and I think at least for the moment, that's still going to involve a lot of humans. The best writing, the best movies, the best music are still going to involve a lot of humans. That's not to say that AI won't be used as part of that process. It's going to be a tool among many other tools, but it won't be purely AI generated. It's going to involve a lot of human checking and human effort, human creativity. Now, 10 years from now, who knows? Maybe the robots will replace us. I just don't see it happening right away
yeah.
because there's a reason that this term AI slop emerged a couple of years ago because you look at it, it's like, oh, it's really cool that a machine generated that, but also it's pretty obvious that a machine generated it.
Hmm. I mean,
What do you
there's a
think,
reason I
Phil?
started a publishing company,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And I feel like, given what Matt said and given what you said, Sanjeev, there's actually the opportunity is here to make really, genuine content for humans by humans. I think people are actually going to gravitate to this more than
Yeah.
they had in the past. It's precisely the reason that people buy organic and locally grown foods and sustainable stuff. It's like you don't just want mass-produced crap all the time. Again, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, right? This is a
yeah,
consequence
yeah.
of it. And I think there's an aversion to this. And the thing is, I'm interested in ideas and authors and publishing ideas that are going to help push the industry forward, right? This is what I'm interested in. I don't see AI doing this anytime soon.
Yeah.
But what back to your other question though, like what does this do to jobs? It's an interesting one.
Mm.
Um, where on one hand, I definitely feel that if you take the scenario that craftsmanship is lost, which it very well could be, the number of engineers is greatly reduced, and the engineers are working more as orchestrators or managers for potentially AI agents down the road. I gave two talks last week at two different
Oh,
universities
wow.
to a group of data engineering students, one at the University of Utah and the other at Northeastern. And the questions were the same, right? It's like, I'm graduating. What do I
Hmm.
do?
Yeah,
And I was like,
exactly.
you're graduating in a
Really.
very interesting inflection point right now. It's not
Yeah.
like when we all finished school, it was more predictable. And I said the only thing I would be doing right now is getting really good at AI and
Hmm.
using this in my everyday workflow. I'd be mastering the fundamentals of my field. And I think if you can do those two things as well as build your network and all the other stuff you should be doing anyway. It's like if you can especially master AI and become very AI native in your workflows, I think this is going to be a huge boon to people who want to hire you because this is where the puck is going. Like it or not, this is reality. And so become better than even senior engineers at using AI. I think that it's what companies are going to want. So
I believe the work that we are doing, the three of us specifically, is where the future is, which is creating
yeah,
content. Because
absolutely.
I feel that sometimes I'm a step ahead of AI because I'm
Hmm.
writing about stuff that AI doesn't know. It's not been trained on it because
Right.
it doesn't
Right.
exist. So, like MCP server and A2A protocol, for example, they didn't exist till a few months ago.
Yeah.
So, and what is the applicability? So, what I would tell people who are new, like just graduating, they should think beyond. They should
Yep,
be like in the creator economy rather than uh, a user of
it's true.
knowledge. So,
That's absolutely right. That's the other thing I've been telling people too, is you have to start treating your career as a business. This isn't
hmm,
the old days where you have to treat yourself like an employee. I think there's a fundamentally major difference. And you're absolutely right. This is what I tell students too, is content creation. You have to get good at this. Your
yeah,
biggest enemy is obscurity. And unfortunately, the employment landscape is changing. People are going to want to hire you if they, or employ you if you just if you're able to communicate, if you're able to express your ideas in content, like you say, is a great way to do that.
yeah.
Yeah, but that's where the world's going. You're right.
Somebody was criticizing AI the other day and asking me, tell me one killer use case of AI. What is the one killer use case? I haven't found anything and it's all just hype and bullshit, it's not going anywhere.
Mhm.
And so I started thinking about it and I was like, well, what is the killer use case of World Wide Web or the internet? Because we've been on it
Yeah.
before it became mainstream in our college days and in companies. Now everybody uses the internet, but what is the killer use case? And I was like, I love the fact that I can now do TurboTax. I don't need to fill up sheets of paper and manually calculate.
Mhm.
I can do Spotify. I don't need to carry my CDs or have iTunes. There's just so many. But are those the killer use case? Instacart. What is the killer use case? And it made me think. People who are asking for what is the killer use case are the same people who are asking what is the meaning of life. There isn't really a use like the internet. It makes the process so much easier, and I think this is what AI is going to do. It just makes the whole process. Like, I'll give you an example. This really blew me away. Last weekend, my daughter, who's in college, she came home for the Easter break, and she was a bit rusty in her cooking skills, and she decided to make caramel. So she starts making caramel and it's not going very well. What does she do? She instantly brings out ChatGPT real-time video and pictures, and she starts asking ChatGPT, and ChatGPT says, "Oh, you put too much water, but don't drain it. It'll spoil the consistency." Then a few minutes later, it says, "Now look at the size of the bubbles." And that tells you it is about to caramelize, but don't step away because it'll be a disaster. And she didn't follow the instructions. And then ChatGPT says, I'm sorry, the sugar has crystallized. It cannot be turned into caramel. At this point, my daughter is kind of despondent, and so she says something, I effed up or something, and it becomes a therapist in real time, and says, "Don't worry, it happens to the best chefs. You can start again, but this is what you should do." And this is all happening in real time.
Yeah.
I found it fascinating the way the kids communicate with AI these days.
Oh, it's interesting. I mean, I use it all the time, and I think the major thing that the internet and AI is doing is it helps reduce friction, all the friction points
Yeah.
that we had. I mean, think about when you grew up in the 80s, right? In the 90s. I mean, there was a lot of friction for everything, and that's reduced. I'll give you a really good example from yesterday, right? One of the solenoids for my sprinkler
Hmm.
blew up, and I'm like, why is there water just gushing like a geyser? So I turn
Hmm.
off my water. I take a picture of the sprinkler part, and I was able. And Amazon's like, okay, cool. This is the one you need.
Nice.
We'll get it to you
Yeah.
tomorrow. I'm like,
Oh,
that's
wow.
awesome. I'd have to look at the
Yeah.
part number, all this stuff. But
Yeah,
it's a good 1 inch solenoid. Well, I was like, yep, that's the one. So I mean, that reduced
Yeah.
friction. That would have taken me. I had to go to back in the 80s. What I'd have to do? I'd have to go to the sprinkler part store.
right.
Try to
Switch.
find the parts and take it
Yeah.
in there and like, is
Yeah, and how
this
much
oh,
time?
we don't have it. We have to order it. It will take months
Order
to
it.
get here.
Yeah.
So
Meanwhile, my
so
lawn dies. You can't
yeah.
water it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had another amazing experience with ChatGPT, AI in general, just this morning. I live in Scottsdale, Arizona. It gets very hot. Not yet, but it's still.
It
So
will.
I go for my walk very early in the morning before the sun rises. I was on my walk yesterday morning, and I noticed the crescent moon and a really bright star next to it. And I'm like very curious. Wow, I've never seen this. What is it? And I'm not into night sky or anything of that sort. I took a picture and I uploaded it to ChatGPT. ChatGPT says what you're looking at, first of all, it recognizes, it says you're looking over the eastern sky over Phoenix, and what you're looking at is a planet Venus, and Venus is at its brightest this week. By the way, take a look. And it said, if you notice right below that, very faint is Saturn. And so you got Venus and Saturn, and then you got this crescent of the moon, and it says this pattern is known as the smiley face. And here is
That's
a
cool.
video from BBC if you want to learn
Oh,
more.
nice. Nice. So it gave you a reference too.
Yeah, yeah. All right.
Dang.
So let's continue on to data. So we've talked about AI
Yeah.
quite a bit. So Joe, you're writing the book on data modeling. How is data modeling changing in the fact that, again, going back to AI, the fact that we can now extract context from different systems. So the whole entity relationship diagram and Irwin work we did, how is all that changing for data modeling and for you writing your book?
It's interesting. I'm actually writing a chapter on this right now on the levels of
Hmm.
data modeling, so conceptual, logical,
I saw your
physical, and so
subtext.
forth,
Yeah.
right? And so what I find fascinating right now is okay, so the arguments against doing all the data modeling work, quote unquote, is that it took too long, right? Whether that's interviewing people, understanding the business, vocabulary, jargon, workflows, et cetera, translating that into a model. There was a lot of friction, right? If we go back to that point, friction galore. Enterprise data modeling, it would die on the vine. These are multi-year projects, and I think it got a bad rap. But what I'm writing about now is it shouldn't take that long anymore. You can move agilely. You've been able to do that for ages. But with agility, and you use data modeling patterns coupled with large language models and so forth. I'm like, this will drastically speed up work. I've been doing this myself. It's
Hmm.
great. Does it get it wrong? Sure. Everything, humans get it wrong too, right? But it is an accelerant, and this is one thing I'm writing about where and the other aspect of this too is this notion of you're starting to see the emergent properties of things like meta lakes,
Hmm.
metadata lakes, really. And this is, I think, sort of the underpinning of what's going to, I think, transform, no pun intended, data modeling from being very database centric, I think, to being cross-sectionally
Hmm.
usable across different use cases. And I think that's something I'm exploring a lot in this chapter is not just the traditional stuff, but also like what's next? What are we capable of doing? There's already been decades of stuff written about ERDs. I'm not, I'll mention them for sure. This is one way to do stuff, and UML, and obviously other things. But I'm like, this isn't the interesting thing right now. The interesting thing is how would you be able to leverage AI with domain expertise to create, better data models. I think
But
it's
I
pretty
have a question.
fascinating.
If I can talk to data and I can ask questions, why do I need to have a data model? Can I not just ingest the data in free form text and have a semantic layer? I think having some definition of some ontology or something. And why do I need to even do data modeling anymore?
Well, I mean, it's an interesting one. It's a notion of just what underpins a lot of systems and applications, right? Databases,
Hmm.
and still to this day, right? If you look at the most widely used database in the world is SQLite.
Hmm.
Every phone
Yes.
has it. And so you're not going to ignore databases. But what the crux is right now is if you tried to talk to your data using like text to SQL, for example, it's very mixed results actually, and a
Yep.
lot of it is dependent upon the underlying data model in the
Correct.
database. And so this
Correct.
is sort of the crux and sort of the circular reasoning is, I do expect that there could be a day when everything is just a vector and some sort of embedding, and then we just don't need to model things. But as of now, the reality is
Yep.
there
As of
are
now.
countless databases. And the question I
Yeah.
always ask when I give talks, and I probably ask this to tens of thousands of people at this point, but it's like, if you were to, who in the audience would put a large language model on top of your existing corporate database today? Barely anyone will raise their hand. And I'm like,
Oh,
and the
yeah.
condition is
I would
if
not.
this thing fails, you lose your job too.
Yes.
And the company loses millions of dollars,
Yes.
possibly, right?
And
Yeah.
Like if this
reputation.
data is
Yep.
wrong. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And compliance, regulatory,
Yeah.
legal risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let me just follow up to what Joe was saying, because
Yeah.
I basically agree. I mean, I think there are basically two problems right now. So first of all, it's just straight up hallucination, right? Like it gets the
Hmm.
answer wrong. And
Correct.
even if that happens 10% of the time, it's a huge problem. And the second, which is related, but not hallucination per se, is consistency. And, if you work in retail or any business, really, what you realize is these seemingly simple SQL queries are actually very, very complicated. So, for example, if you work for an online retailer, let's say you want to know the revenue for the last 24 hours. So you write a simple SQL query. Well, what you find out actually is that that's a very complicated query because that business assumes that maybe 2.5% of all revenue is always going to be fraud. So you have to make sure that if you're providing a number that is consistent with the number that the CEO got yesterday, it has to
Hmm.
account for that fraud number. Or maybe you have different fraud by different categories. You see these queries to just answer the question of what revenue is, and they're very, very complicated. And so if you just ask a large language model to generate a query, even if it's mostly correct, it may not be consistent with the way that that company has been doing analytics. They get an inconsistent number, and then they actually don't have a real picture of how the business is performing that day. And
Yeah.
just like Joe said, someone gets fired for that, right? Like,
Oh
hey,
yeah.
you told me that the business was doing great, and we're having a terrible day, and I didn't make any adjustments in my marketing spend or whatever happens
Well,
to be.
I was on a panel with somebody a few
Yeah.
years ago. I'm not going to name the person, but this person has a hardware company in AI, and they're like, "Well, we can just put this on top of, we can just replace database with this." I'm like, "You mean to tell me like ACID, like transactional databases, you're
Yeah.
going to just replace it with like some sort of a probabilistic system?" I'm like, "I would never do a banking transaction in a system like
Yeah.
that. That would be insane." But this person, I think they're too far into what they're building,
Yeah.
so I think it's a mix of both, right? But you aren't going to ignore the fact that like there's just trillions of databases out there right now,
Hmm.
Correct.
and that's just how it
By
is.
the way, SQLite is not just the most deployed database, it's the most deployed software.
Yep.
Period.
Mm,
People have no
And
idea.
it's
Every Chrome browser, every browser in the world, every iPhone, every Android has SQLite in it. That's probably the biggest secret in the world is
Yeah,
SQLite.
and even like major industrial equipment, airplanes have SQLite. The
No
Airbus
way.
A350 has SQLite built into it in
Oh,
part of its
wow.
analytics system. It's
Wow.
just everywhere you look. It's kind of
Wow.
amazing.
So I agree with you. I would never put an LLM on top
Yeah,
of my database. I mean,
yeah,
that's just a scary thought. But data products could be that level of abstraction. This is a week that our friend Zhamak Dehghani, Nextdata, she finally launched her product, autonomous
okay.
data product. So Matt, let me start with you. Are you seeing data products? Are businesses buying data products? What's going on in this space?
Um, okay, so I guess I may step back from this question because my tendency, the way I like personally to define data product is that it's any product really that has a heavy data element. And so, for example, it can just be a table for me, or it can be like a customer facing recommender, the whole thing I consider a data product. I think a lot of other people define it differently, where it's just, they like to consider like the table that you provide to someone that strictly is the data product. So since my definition is different, I'll let Joe take this.
Oh, thank you. No, I was excited about what Zhamak had released. So I'd spoken with her and her team actually, a bit about whether we call it data mesh or data products. It's like it's autonomous data products. I think this is where it needs to go right now.
Ah,
But
yes.
it is interesting. I definitely want to try out what she's built. I haven't had a chance to put my hands on it, but it is interesting because like the data products are sort of it's a topic du jour next to
Yeah,
AI. And
yeah,
you're starting to hear about AI products. I actually have two different authors working on the books on data products right now.
Oh,
nice.
So
and
yeah,
then publish under your
yeah, under
label.
my new label.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
That's
Okay.
all,
Well, let
but
me
it's
ask you,
cool.
Joe,
Yeah.
is that
No,
your
it's okay.
definition, that it's just like the data itself that you provide in a consistent way? Is that the definition you like to use for data product? Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot here.
I think the data product to me is in the eye of the beholder. I think it's more
Okay.
about
Yeah.
does it meet certain criteria? Like, is it consistent?
Yeah.
Like, if you looked at a regular product, right, does it have
Yeah.
consistency? Does it have quality control and so forth, right? But a product is something ultimately that serves utility for other people, that people find useful. This is how I look at it. I mean, we spent
Perfect.
a whole
Yeah.
hour at Day-to-Day Texas with Jean-Georges Perrin. Everyone is trying to debate what a
Hmm.
data
Right.
product is, and yet some of the top minds in the industry, and at the end of the day, nobody could figure it out. So I'm like, okay, if you had this group of people, who are trying to who couldn't figure out data products or at least come
Yeah.
to somewhat of a consensus, I'm like, I just don't know. To me, it's a very subjective thing, and ultimately it depends on what you're trying to derive, what utility you're deriving from this product. Is how I look at it.
Yeah,
So,
I
what do you
like
think,
that.
Sid?
And I like your utility focus. I think that's the key thing here, right? Otherwise, we get very, very pedantic trying to really nail down what it
Yeah, my brain
is.
like melts when you know me, Matt. I mean, my brain like hurts if I hear pedantic stuff. I'm just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
yeah,
I,
grinding
I
gears
tell
and
people that, I don't like to get down the slippery slope of definitions
Yeah.
because I have battle scars. Even
Hmm.
today, uh, like years after big data came out, I cannot define what big data is. And I don't care. I don't care to
Yeah.
define it. I think it's a mindset of when we started working with massive amounts of data, whether it was Hadoop and then later Spark and all that. But that definition, and now as people are like, what's AGI? Define AGI. I have never written about AGI. I have no intention of writing about AGI because to me it's worthless, waste of time. I've delegated it to Elon Musk. He can talk about it on my behalf. Because the thing is that some people think AGI is already here, and some people think it's coming, and some people say it'll never happen.
yeah.
So
It's a meaning of life question, like you said. It is
yeah,
just
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
If
Yeah.
So
someone starts talking about AGI, I feel like I've drifted into hype, right? And that's not to
yeah,
say that
yeah,
the domain is not useless. There's a lot of
yeah,
very exciting stuff
yeah,
happening here.
yeah,
But let's be precise about what we're talking about. Are we talking
yeah.
about a tool that can generate SQL queries or a tool that can interact with
Hmm.
me and talk about caramel? All those are useful things, but calling it AGI, I don't know. It just
Yeah,
feels
so
like it.
wake me up when
Yeah.
AGI comes,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
till then,
Exactly.
yeah. There's so many things. In fact, this is turning into like what's happening this week and the hottest topics.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
we talk about next data, the other big thing that actually came as a surprise to me, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. Datadog bought Metaplane.
Yeah.
Joe, I know you spend a lot of time in the data observability space. So, is this a reckoning, a moment for data observability, or is it because these observability companies like Datadogs of the world, New Relics, are billion-dollar companies, but the data observability space has been struggling to make a mark. So, Joe, any thoughts on this topic?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, congratulations to Kevin Hu and the
Yeah.
Metaplane crew. Kevin's a really good friend of ours, and
Yeah.
um, yeah, I'm just really excited for for an exit, right? Especially in this market, it's awesome to see. I was actually, funny enough, wearing a Metaplane shirt when I saw his post. They always hooked me up with swag. So, and the thing is, I'm friends with everybody in the observability space. I think like half my
Yeah.
friends run observability companies. So,
Yes.
is it a day of reckoning? I think it's a sign that perhaps, to me, that was a signal that, a mature company like Datadog was willing to, fork over. I'm not sure what the terms of the deal was, but the fact that they're willing to purchase something like Metaplane, I think is a sign that it is a category. There's something there, and with data becoming more front and center,
Mhm.
especially with AI. Uh, yeah, I mean, the interesting anecdotes I hear from people in the observability space is a few years ago, before AI, this was actually hard to sell. Observability was,
Yeah.
um, man, I mean, I would have better luck being a dental floss salesman, I think. But it's like just going door to door selling floss.
Yeah.
It was just one of those things where it was I think kind of seen as a nice to have. Some people don't even think that this is a real category.
Hmm.
Right? It's like, oh, observability isn't a thing. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I think it's a thing.
I think it is.
So
Yeah.
it is, and it works. Data quality is a real thing. But when AI came onto the scene, the focus on data quality, I think just it was upped
Yeah.
by quite a few notches. And so, business is great for a lot of my friends in the observability space. And I'm very happy for them.
Oh, wow.
So yeah,
Yep.
it's been going. I think it's been doing well as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
So.
And Matt, what are your
Um,
thoughts?
I think there are two trends that we're seeing here finally
Hmm.
starting to emerge. And I think these have been predicted for a while, but aftermath of the modern data stack, there's a lot of talk of we're going to start bundling again, right? Bundling, unbundling.
That was my
Which
next topic. Thank you.
spawned a lot of companies.
Yep.
And, I think Metaplane is a great product. I
Hmm.
think it will be probably be an even better product bundled together with other things so
Hmm.
that if I'm running an ops team, I can now focus on my observing all of my tools and servers, but I can also observe the data at the same time. It's I always like to point out that IBM itself was a product of bundling. It was like taking
Hmm.
three companies, combining as an act of financial engineering that built this huge behemoth. And I think we're probably going to see a lot of these companies that were spawned during the modern data stack cycle bundled up and turned into really great larger products. I think the second thing here is just this underscores to Joe's point about the focus on data has become so important that we need to observe it just like our servers, just like our endpoints.
Mhm.
And so that's why Datadog wanted to make this move.
So let's talk about bundling. This is, by the way, you said you're two, right? Is there another thing? Uh, uh,
Wait,
okay,
what's
so
that?
let's talk about bundling. So what at reInvent, we saw AWS announce SageMaker
Yeah,
Lakehouse, which
yeah,
was first time they were bringing together data and analytics together and AI together, structured, unstructured, all of that. We've seen Microsoft with Fabric, that's been very well known. Uh, BigQuery is becoming more of a data and AI platform
yeah,
than what it started originally as. Snowflake, Databricks, they're all basically these five companies. But then you've got Iceberg, of course, you've got Delta and Hoodie, but especially Iceberg in most of these cases, except Databricks, which is very Delta centric, and Microsoft Fabric, they're unbundling. So what's going on in this space? In fact, a lot of smaller companies are starting to feel this pressure because if everything is on SageMaker Lakehouse with
yeah.
a glue data catalog and S3 tables, why do I need to have so many independent products? So
Mm.
thoughts on that?
So I think there's always going to be an appetite for both. The pendulum does swing over time, but quite a few corporations do not want to deal with 50 different tools. They just want to go to
Hmm.
one company and buy something fairly straightforward that fits most of their needs. And I think one of the problems with the clouds was that for a long time, Amazon and to some extent Google and Azure were so focused on just infrastructure as a service that the other services were just kind of tacked on, right? They
Yeah.
weren't great integrated products. And I think finally the cloud providers are maturing to the point where they can provide more enterprise level integration platforms. But I think we'll continue to see some unbundled products where if I'm a company that really specializes in data, maybe what they're offering in BigQuery or Redshift is just not going to cut it, and I need something specialized. But yeah, it's always this tug of war between the unbundling and bundling conversation, right? Isn't that the
Yeah, for
classic quote?
sure.
You make money in two ways, bundling and unbundling, basically.
Yes, yeah.
Well, and that's the big cloud providers too. I mean,
Yeah,
it's always fascinating just to see like which of their partners in their ecosystems do they just kill off, so or just
that's
severely
true too.
kneecap, right?
Yeah,
It's like, okay, who is taken out back? So every conference is like that. But at the end of the
yeah,
day, what Matt said, I think is right. Where I mean, a lot of these solutions, right? If you go to the big cloud providers, they're decent, I think, for 80%, if you get you 80% of the way there,
yeah,
Hmm.
right? But there's a lot of guardrails. You have to do things within the ecosystem. I mean, so my opinion on, if you're talking about the big three, it's kind of like most of their tools they're good enough, and maybe that's all you need, right? But I don't see the teams, the engineering teams, the product teams, like really leading the charge in terms of like innovating new
Hmm.
features. That's more for specialized companies, is what I'm seeing. But what these big clouds are is they're fast followers for sure. And the
Yeah.
thing is that because they are the platform, they are the toll road. It's like you're going, which one do you want to be on? Inevitably, you're going to be paying somebody.
Hmm.
So that's just how it is. But yeah, but what it means for smaller vendors, at least in my opinion, you just have to be that much better and have a
Yeah.
compelling story. Otherwise, it's like,
Yeah.
what CFO in the right mind these days is going to say, "Oh yeah, let's bring on 20 new tools. That's great. Let's have 20 different
yeah,
contracts, with very variable payment terms." No, I want predictability and consistency right now,
yeah,
especially in this economy, right? Somebody had a really good quote the other day, where there's a lot of uncertainty about uncertainty.
Hmm.
This is like the and
Yeah.
that feeling right now is like some, experienced traders and stuff said that they've never felt this before, but there's just so much uncertainty about uncertainty. So if you're,
Right.
especially if you're in charge of a data team and have budget, it's like you want predictability and consistency,
yeah.
unless there's a competitive advantage to going out on a limb.
Yeah,
But
agree. If a vendor comes and says, "Hey, you have this very specific problem that AWS is not solving for you, and we can solve it and let us demonstrate," then you're going to sign on. Otherwise, you're probably not going to bother in the current
Correct.
environment. Yeah, I agree.
I've also noticed, like, if you take Snowflake as an example, Snowflake has introduced a ton of new functionality. If you want to do data access governance, fine-grained access control, they have that. If you want to do observability, they have those commands. If you want to do data ops, like CI/CD, orchestration of tasks, so they're introducing just recently those commands. But to use those, you have to be in Snowflake's environment and you have to write these
Hmm.
SQL statements because that's how the whole thing works. But most organizations uh, want to be at a level higher than Snowflake because they've got data in other places and they want to maybe not use SQL command for everything. So I see it's a good thing that Snowflake introduces these things because these primitives can be used by these higher level companies or cross-platform companies, but they don't, and they can give that ease of use, that user experience, and the breadth of functionality that a hyperscaler, like you said, Joe, you're getting 80% of what you want, but to get that 100% experience, you probably need these other companies.
yeah, I mean, I always looked at it kind of like, you can go to the Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah,
They have like 1,000 items on the menu.
correct.
Or is it going to be the best version of that item? Probably not.
Right.
And so, but that's how I kind of view this stuff. It's,
Very
you know,
interesting.
it's kind of kitsch, but whatever.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
So,
I
yeah.
think part of it here with Snowflake specifically is a leadership issue. I think honestly, Frank Slootman was really great for their IPO, but he
Mhm.
also tried to turn Snowflake into Oracle. And
Hmm.
come to Oracle, we're going to make you sign a huge contract with 10 different
Right.
products, and everything is
Wow.
here. And yeah, maybe use
Yes.
some other stuff, but like we're very
Yeah.
Oracle focused.
Yeah.
And I think Sridhar Ramaswamy comes from a very different background. So I'm curious
Hmm.
to see how that culture changes because I think first of all, Snowflake is going to drift toward being a much more technically powerful tool with a lot of innovation, kind of like it was in the early days,
Hmm.
where we see better true ML solutions coming out, not so limited like Snowpark, which is what we got, and then better integration and open source. But we'll see. It will take time. But I think a big cultural shift is probably happening at Snowflake right now.
That's amazing. I'm so glad you brought up what's happening with Snowflake. Snowflake Summit is coming up first week of
Yeah.
June, and then the very following week is Databricks Data and AI Summit.
Yeah.
Are you both attending? Are we going to see each other there?
Let's see.
I don't have plans to attend. There may be some content coming out around there. So
I see.
I think Tony's going to be there and he'll be
Yeah,
kind of boots on the ground.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
I'm
Joe,
gonna be
you'll be
roaming
there?
around. Yeah, I should be at both. I'm
Okay.
waiting on confirmation for Databricks Summit, but I'm definitely
Nice.
at Snowflake all week, so
Okay.
yeah, it's gonna be fun.
This has been amazing. It's been great, like riffing with you on all
Yeah,
these things. I think we could do it every week. We could say, this is what happened this week. So let's just, parse it. So it's like there's so much.
don't threaten me with a good time there, Sanjeev. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything you want to add before we go? By the way, Matt, I've been very curious. Your company is called Half Pipe.
Yeah, it's really just an entity that I used to do a lot of different things.
I
I
see.
started it way back in 2018, and that's still the name
you're
I
like a
have.
pro
So Joe,
skateboarder or something, like
not at all.
okay.
Joe is much. I mean, you used to skate quite a bit, right, Joe?
Yeah,
Okay.
still do once in a while.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was, data engineering, data pipelines. Like, what kind of name can I come up with? And so that's what I had at the time, and it was just sort of a
So
throwaway
it's a
name. And then now it's
pipeline.
the one.
I see.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the one. That's
But
what I
halfway
use now.
done.
Yeah,
Halfway done.
exactly.
Yes. You need Matt to come and finish it. So take
That's
it to the end.
right.
So yeah. Yes, amazing. Well, thank you so much. It was such
Yeah,
a pleasure. Really enjoyed our conversation, and I want to thank everyone who's been listening. Till next time, take care, everyone. Talk to you soon. See you.
all right, see
Bye.
ya.
Thank you so much.
Better.
Bye.